I'm Sam from Cultaholic Wrestling, and this is Graded for Friday Night SmackDown, where I take a look at the show segment by segment, and I want each little bit of grade from A+ to F. Now, SmackDown this week is chock full of everything. Absolutely everything happens on the show this week. There are so many segments in the build-up to Royal Rumble, so without any further ado, let's crack on with it. Hit the intro. So we get a cold open this week with Roman Reigns sat backstage looking at the contract for his match with Adam Pearce at Royal Rumble. He's not signed the contract yet, and Heyman believes there should be some sort of stipulation in order to put Pearce firmly in his place, and he promises that he'll go and sort it. And then we go to the ring for Jey Uso's opening promo, in which he welcomes us to SmackDown, which he refers to as the Bloodline Show. He says that everybody backstage and the fans, not just the current roster that's working with Roman, should be thankful to Roman for everything that he does for them. He says that he's entering the Rumble, and when he wins, he's going to go to Raw, he's going to take the WWE title, and the family will control everything. And then he's cut off by Shinsuke Nakamura, but not just any Shinsuke Nakamura with his old pose, and Shinsuke Nakamura with his old music. He's facing it, everybody! Nakamura then simply says if Roman is the big dog, then Jey is his little puppy, and then Nakamura kicks him, and we go into the match. So the first match of tonight is Jey Uso versus Shinsuke Nakamura, and Nakamura brings it out of the gate. Jey finds a window, but Nakamura is just straight back on him, fighting back, driving knees into him and just flinging him into the corner. As Uso is sent tumbling to the outside and into the commentary table, out comes Cesaro. And after we go to a break and come back, Cesaro's sat at commentary and he says he's here to support his friend Shinsuke Nakamura, and also he's entering the Rumble, and if he wins, he's going to take on Roman Reigns. Jey has firm control at this point though, just stomping all over Nakamura in the corner, but Nakamura gets him with a sliding knee, and he also manages to hit him with this slide-in snap German suplex under the rope, which was just fantastic. Nakamura lines up the Kinshasa but runs straight into a super kick. When Jey goes for the splash, Nakamura gets his knees up, but Jey ultimately sends Nakamura into the ring post. And then very shortly after this, it looks like Uso's got the pin, except the camera pulls back and it reveals that he's using the ropes as leverage. The referee catches this and is like, no, what are you doing? Come on, breaks the pin. In the confusion, Nakamura gets a cheeky roll-up and picks up the win. Cesaro celebrates with him for an awkward amount of time, but he doesn't turn on him, he doesn't attack him or anything, he just stands there raising his mate's hand. I'm going to give this one, promo and match combined, a B+. It was nice, the promo was great, and it didn't really have any let-up time. It was just constantly just at each other's throats. It felt a little short, but as we're finding out, SmackDown is just more and more packed these days. Nakamura is potentially face again. It looks like he's face again, considering everything that's going on here. And it also gives Jey Uso, a reasonable complaint that he can be like, oh God, I was cheated out of this, I should have won it, standard heel behavior. We then go to Sonya Deville and Adam Pearce backstage, and Sonya says to Pearce, I've seen a lot of your stuff on YouTube. I genuinely think you're in with a shot at taking the belt from Roman. And Pearce is like, come on, that was a different me. He's been gone for a long time, and they're just sort of talking like that, and then up pops Paul Heyman. Heyman introduces the fact that there's going to be a stipulation. Roman hasn't signed the contract yet, but there's going to be a stipulation at the match at the Rumble, and it's going to be no DQ. So Pearce signs away, hands it back to Heyman, because he knows that, it's not for his benefit, as Heyman was trying to make out. It's more that they just want to hurt him as much as possible. We then go backstage to Jey Uso and Lil Nate's Charles Robinson, who was the referee in his match, and Jey is just screaming at him, saying oh, I'm going to cost you your job, should have counted the pin and all this stuff, and Robinson's just a little bit confused. This continues the Bloodline sort of trying to politic their way into a little bit of a higher position in the hierarchy within the wider company. We then go to the Street Profits, who are being interviewed by Kayla backstage. She asks them about losing their titles, and they're like, you know what, we're fighting champions, we don't turn down an offer, we want to build a legacy, and we'll get them back next time, don't worry. And then perhaps most interestingly of all, on this episode of SmackDown, we go backstage to Roman Reigns' dressing room, and sat next to him is Apollo Crews. So as we cut in, they're in the middle of a conversation, but we hear Roman say, it's all about control. If you don't do it, nobody will. And then Heyman comes back, and Apollo, as you would, in sort of a business situation, Apollo's like, oh, it's okay, I'll get up, I'll leave, don't worry. And Roman's like, no, you stay. you could learn a lot here. Heyman brings the news that Pearce has signed the contract and that it'll be a no DQ match, and Roman is not happy. He wants last man standing, and he sends Paul on his merry way to sort that out. But Apollo Crews as a Roman Reigns / Paul Heyman protege, this could be huge for Crews' career, and used properly, he's been showing a lot more aggression recently. I think this could be a nice fit. And next up we go to Liv Morgan versus Natalya, and out she comes. The definite 100% real, 100% confirmed, definitely happening member of the Riot Squad, Billie Kay. She's all punked up, she's got like plaid on, she's throwing the horns but upside down and down low like Spider-Man. She's really punk. She gets down to ringside, sits herself on commentary, says that she's not a fully fledged member yet, but there's hope. She's here to stay. But as for the match itself, it's really just a lot of back and forth. It's quite aggressive and both competitors are bringing the heat, but ultimately Liv gets dropped into a sharpshooter position and then Billie Kay leaves commentary. So yeah, at this point Billie starts to harass the referee and it's all a little bit confusing. Nobody really knows why she's doing it. Tamina's there with Natty and Tamina's just like, come on, like, what's going on? Leave, get out of here. And Tamina starts to chase her. However, Billie Kay decides, I've got to run away as fast as I can, and she goes through the ring. So she climbs into the ring, disrupts the match, causes a bit of confusion, and ultimately costs Liv the match. Now, I'm trying to see the best in this. I'm trying to think of this as a storyline that's going to build to something very entertaining down the line. And so I'm trying to look at this as more of a setup scenario than a win-loss match scenario. And so I'm going to give it a C+. The match itself was quite disjointed and obviously it did no favours for anybody involved. Billie especially looked a little bit silly for climbing into the ring. She should know that she wouldn't be able to really get away with that without there being some sort of distraction. But, hopefully this is all just building up to something good and we've just got to bide our time. Next up, we're going to Rey Mysterio with Dominic at ringside versus Baron Corbin. We have Dominic on commentary and Rey is dressed up like a pot of mushy peas tonight as Corbin just sets to work absolutely demolishing him. Rey tries for an early bulldog but gets sent to the floor by Corbin. Corbin comes out, starts beating down Rey and getting in Dominic's face. Rey then just continues to eat a lot of abuse as commentary are suggesting maybe Dominic should be standing up for himself. He might cost Rey the match, but at least he'd have his honor and stuff like that. And Corbin's really milking it. He's like choking Rey over the ropes and just staring at Dominic on commentary side, things like that. A little later on, Corbin almost eats a 619, but manages to change it round with a deep 6, and then we go back to the floor and more mugging off Dominic. With things back in the ring and Dominic now standing at ringside rather than staying on commentary where he was, Corbin is able to shove Rey into Dominic, creating a little bit of a situation that he's able to capitalise on. End of days, 1, 2, 3. I'm also going to give this one a C+. It was obviously more of a setup for an eventual Dominic-Corbin match, but it was a little bit jarring, I'm not going to lie, seeing Rey fall so easily. Corbin absolutely demolished him. When we get to the Dominic-Corbin match, it should hopefully be pretty solid, and it makes sense for Rey to lose here, and that be the impetus of this entire feud. We then go to Adam Pearce, who's walking backstage, where he again bumps into Paul Heyman, and Heyman pops up and he's like, change of plan. Roman still hasn't signed yet. We're gonna mix things up a bit. It's gonna be a last man standing match, and he hands him the contract, and he's like, there you go. But you don't need to sign it now. You can take your time. We're going to do that later on in the ring. We then go to Dominic and Rey, who are backstage having a little bit, not an argument, but a little bit of a tiff because Rey's trying to tell Dominic that he can't just keep biting at Corbin. And Dominic's like, no, I can take him. And Rey's like, come on. He's like a former champion, former Golden Gloves champion as well. Like the guy, he's pretty tough. But he tells Dominic not to worry because he's got somebody in mind that might actually be able to help them. And next up we go to the debut of Bayley's very own segment. It's called Ding Dong Hello, and it's got a whole door in the middle of the ring, a very nice comfy chair, and a very awkwardly uncomfortable stool. So we hear a doorbell. Bayley opens the door that's just stood in a door frame in the middle of the ring and emerges, welcomes us all, and then welcomes her guest to the show. Her guest is Bianca Belair, who makes her entrance down the ramp, and then Bayley makes her get in the ring and then stand behind the door and ring the doorbell and then come through the door, and it's all very awkward, but it needs to be here. Belair comes through the door and then sits directly in Bayley's seat next to a big plaque that's got Bayley's achievements all over it, and Bayley's then left with either the option of standing or sitting on the awkward stool. Bayley congratulates Belair on her upcoming WWE Chronicle, and she says, I've actually got a little sneak peek here now. Let's take a look at the screen, and it's just footage of Bayley beating Belair last month. She asks Belair about the EST nickname and then immediately cuts her off and claims to be better. She also suggests that maybe, Belair coming in here and saying she's the best and the strongest and the fastest and all of this stuff, it's quite insulting to somebody with Bayley's level of achievement. Belair suggests maybe they have a match right now, and Bayley's like, no, we need a way to show off all of your abilities. So next week, let's have an obstacle course. I'm curious. I'm curious to see where it's going to go, and I've got no doubt SmackDown will somehow pull it off, but it was not what I was expecting to hear at this moment. I'm only going to give this one a C- though, because it just felt quite disjointed. It didn't feel like it really gelled the way that they wanted it to do, but it is the first episode, it's the first time they've done this whole segment. They'll have had some practice before, but as weeks go on, it's going to get more and more natural, hopefully. Setup was great. It all looked great. It's just, maiden voyage had just a couple of little issues. We then go to an earlier today backstage, which is Bryan, Otis, and Gable. Bryan is training with Alpha Academy, and they're doing all of these squats and hip exercises and all of this cool wrestler stuff that I have no idea about. Kayla pops up, asks Bryan about Nakamura and, the handshake and everything, and Bryan gives quite a gracious answer, only for Cesaro to pop up and be like, I know Shinsuke Nakamura better than you, he's my friend. Don't you be trying to be friends with my friend, he's my best friend. But Cesaro suggests that Nakamura doesn't respect Bryan, and he also runs down the Alpha Academy training regime, and Bryan's like, alright then, well if you think the training's a joke, then how about I show you one-on-one later. So that's happening on the show tonight. And when's it happening? Well, it's happening right now. We've got Daniel Bryan versus Cesaro. Both men lock up to start this one. There's a little bit of back and forth, but Bryan just gets completely bossed out by Cesaro's raw power. He fights back to control with Cesaro's arm getting worked over pretty hard, but when Cesaro eventually tries to power out again, Bryan's dumped to the floor, and then just before we go to the break with both guys on the outside, Bryan hits a running knee on the ring post by accident. So when we come back, Cesaro is firmly in charge, just working over the knee that Bryan kneed the post with. Whenever Bryan can get a window of opportunity, he's straight back on the arm that he's trying to just rip off of Cesaro's body. Cesaro is still able to hit the swing though before going down into a sharpshooter position. Bryan somehow though is able to roll this through into a yes lock that Cesaro is only just able to break. Bryan then goes back to the arm, it goes all the way up the turnbuckle, and they're up there sitting on the top rope, and then it eventually ends with Bryan getting absolutely vertical suplexed to hell from the second rope by Cesaro. Cesaro misses the uppercut and the neutralizer, and then when Bryan comes running at him for the running knee, Cesaro is finally able to hit the uppercut and the neutralizer and pick up the win. This gets an A. Surprise, surprise. At long last, a high-profile victory for Cesaro. Commentary played it up throughout that both guys have got a long history with each other. They know each other's movesets inside out. They know the determination and grit of each other, and this would be a hell of a program. Please WWE, please WWE, make this a thing. We then go backstage to Carmella, who runs down Sasha for being absent pretty much for the last couple of weeks of TV. She starts running her down before Sasha pops up, and they have a little bit of a brawl, just a little bit of a fight, and then Sasha's like, okay, you'll get your title match if I can have a match with him first, and she points to the sommelier. Next up, we have Sami Zayn versus Apollo Crews, and again, this is quite an interesting prospect given that Crews has been hanging around with Roman earlier in the night. We see that clip as well of Heyman getting Crews all fired up on Talking Smack, and commentary are really speculating about what's going on with him as a character. So Sami comes down to the ring once again with his camera crew, who I'm fairly certain are grizzled young vets. I'm fairly certain. It looks like them. But that's not all, because Big E is also at ringside. And he's not just at ringside, he's at ringside on commentary with a mini fridge and a giant cream leather couch. Apollo explodes onto Zayn the second that the bell rings, but unfortunately he's dumped to the outside. When Sami comes down to the outside to have a little bit of a scrappy fight with him, Apollo hits a moonsault off the announce table. Sami, however, just springs back up and boo, straight back into the ring. Apollo is absolutely dominating here. Like, if you go back and watch this match, he is just wiping the floor with Zayn. But it works here because Zayn is wily. So while Zayn might not be getting as much offense in, he's certainly still using his head to try and get little roll-ups here and there and take advantage of the situation as best he can. It's not like he's just stood there like a dummy going, what are the rules? And just getting absolutely obliterated. Sami gets caught trying to leverage a pin by grabbing Apollo's trunks before hitting an exploder suplex into the corner. He then lines up for the haluva kick, comes sprinting at Apollo, only for Apollo to come charging out, roll him up, grab a handful of trunks of his own, and expose Sami Zayn's bare ass to the entire world. You see a lot of Sami Zayn's ass, a lot more than I think I'd ever see. And yeah, he picks up the win while exposing a bit of bum. Post-belt, Apollo goes out to Big E on ringside. He picks up the title and he's sort of looking at it. Big E gets a bit standoffish, like, give me my belt back. And there's just a little bit of a suggestion of a tiff between these two, expanding and, you know, maybe turning into the next big feud for the IC belt. Gonna give this a B-. It was short, but it achieved everything it had to do. Sami still looks absolutely wily and crazy and like he's gonna try and win by any means. And Apollo Crews looks stronger than I think we've ever seen him look in terms of him being like a genuine, aggressive in-ring threat. It could be a really, really, really interesting thing moving forward if they continue expanding on this character. And finally, we go to the ring for Adam Pearce and Roman Reigns' contract signing. So down comes Roman, Jey, and Heyman, and then out comes Pearce. And they all sort of stand around Pearce until he sits down. And then when he sits down, they encircle him, and then Heyman tries to pull a chair up for Roman, and Roman, classic power move here. Definitely a big old dirty power move here. Roman's like, I don't want that chair. I want Adam's chair. And so he makes Pearce stand up and you know, swap chairs, and it's just all very awkward. Pearce, without hesitation, signs the contract and slams the pen down. Roman, smirking like, you don't know what you're getting yourself into, signs the contract too. And then Pearce takes the contract and he's like, thank you very much. I've been waiting for you to do that all night. And he just walks out of the ring. He gets halfway up the ramp before he just falters a little and then takes a couple more steps and his leg feels really stiff and he keeps reaching for it. And then he gets to the top of the ramp. Pearce says that his knee's been pretty bad recently, you know, old injuries and stuff. They just come back sometimes and they're really nagging and you can never really expect them. They just happen. He says, I guess an important part of every WWE title contract is the part that says card subject to change. And as I don't feel I'll be medically cleared in time for the Rumble, well then that means I have to find a suitable competitor. And then out comes Kevin Owens. I think we all saw this one coming. Owens signs the contract, smiles as he stares at Roman, who is just burning a laser beam through his face. This gets an A, and it's not just the promo, it's sort of the wider implications of this little scenario here that nets it the A. Now, I was really sort of hoping for this Pearce match. I might have been in the minority on that one, but I just thought it could have been something, you know, interesting. It could have been something special that we could have had. You know, it was probably never going to happen at the Rumble anyway, but maybe we could have had it on a SmackDown or something. It's probably not going to happen now, but whatever. What's important here is that Roman Reigns has already established dominance over the roster. He's already, you know, everybody else on the roster's pretty much in line, except for one or two like Kevin Owens. Everybody else knows that he's the top dog. The problem is that he's got Adam Pearce to deal with, and Adam Pearce is from the company, and the company ultimately have all the power here, and Roman doesn't ever want to lose the title. So if Roman wants to hold on to that belt forever, he needs to send a message to the company that they need to take him seriously. He was going to do this by attacking Pearce, but what Pearce has done here is play him at his own game, because Pearce didn't want to do the match anyway. All that's happened here is that Pearce has gone, well, you don't actually understand the wider political nature of this. I work in the office, I work in the higher position, I am around this political sphere all day, every day, and essentially he's just gone, checkmate. And he's absolutely handed Roman's ass to him in just one little swoop. Overall, in terms of a grade for SmackDown this week, I'm going to give it a B-. Now, I didn't really want to take anything off the show for it being jam-packed. I need to say that, like, the show was very, very busy. Like, there was so much going on. But I think that's a good thing because it's not all bad, you know? I didn't really want to go, well, there's too much, because there's been so many times where I was like, well, there's just not enough going on. We can't complain if there's too much, really, can we? If it's all, you know, all right. I can't wait to see Roman's revenge on Pearce for this next week, because I think it's going to be very bloody and very brutal. And I think we're probably not going to see Adam Pearce for a couple of weeks on TV for, you know, just after it. I think Roman's not going to be best pleased. But the other talking point is, of course, Apollo Crews. Now, my thinking on this, I don't know about you guys, maybe let me know what you think's going to happen with Apollo Crews and Roman below, but my thinking is that they're going to put him in a situation where he is the IC champion, but he's aligned with the bloodline. Whether he's a full-time partner of the stable or not, you know, whatever. He's going to be aligned and in allegiance with Roman Reigns. And this means that Roman can sort of dictate who Apollo faces. Maybe they can keep control of the IC scene, because if you break through the IC scene, the next stop is the Universal title. So if they've got that roadblock in the way, I mean, they're probably going to swap Apollo out for Jey maybe at some point. You don't know. But I think for now, initially, like, Apollo might be more of, you know, they might be using him more than he thinks. But that has been graded for Friday Night SmackDown. Apologies if this went long. I really was trying to condense it as much as I could. What did you guys think of the show? Let me know in the comments below. But as always, stay safe, and I'll see you soon.